Hello, welcome to Easy Plays MTG. I'm Ez, and we're going to be making some easy plays in Magic the Gathering. Except for today, we are actually going to be talking about some easy playing, like where they announced their Commander Brackets beta earlier this week. It's had a few days to kind of simmer a little bit. I had taken a little bit of time to sort of gather some of my thoughts on it, but I wanted to put out a video ahead of MagicCon Chicago yet, just like they wanted to get this out to the audience ahead of Chicago so they can really get some good testing in. So the article, just want to go through the article that Gavin got posted a few days ago to announce the Brackets beta. I know they had talked about they were working on this after the shifting of Commander management to Wizards of the Coast. I honestly didn't expect anything to be ready in time for MagicCon Las Vegas last fall. That seemed a little unrealistic. So I'm glad they do have this ahead of MagicCon Chicago now that we are headed towards that just next weekend. So that's really exciting stuff. So kind of the preface for this, he's got three things he wants to lay out ahead of getting into the brackets themselves. Number one here, expects that nothing will change for the majority of your folks that play. This is probably because you have your own play groups that you already know has balanced pod play for where you each expect your decks to fall in the range of power, which is great. All of that will mean nothing can change whatsoever. But, there's still the ability to have a Rule Zero conversation at the start if your group has established rules and you just want to clarify, hey, so I'm going to do this thing instead. Is that all right? Or even with randoms, if we get comfortable with the brackets where I'm in bracket 2, except for some things, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of my thoughts about the bracket organization a little bit later as well. Just making sure that the whole table is comfortable with what we're playing at power level wise. The second thing here, the system cannot stop bad actors. If you've ever been in a pod where you've had the feeling of being pub stomped, or you're at the next table over and you're witnessing a game where a player is being, their either play level or the ability of their deck just is distinctively higher than the rest of the players at the table, that's what the bad actors can be for most of my attention. Again, if the intention with this is to help classify things, for kind of, whether it's a big event like MagicCon Chicago will be, or if it's just an influx of new folks coming into a local game store, having this bracket system will help keep our honest players. And again, this is that important part for the majority of our players that have a vested interest in playing healthy games of Commander. Being honest and open with the whole table as you're getting started in a game as part of a Rule Zero kind of thing is really important. So the third thing that they have here is just a beta test. This isn't going to be a perfect system by any means. They want their feedback as much as possible. Utilize their links here in their article to get to those things, to be able to provide good feedback to them. Again, we're ahead of MagicCon Chicago, so they're going to be watching for feedback from Chicago, which is going to be really great. We want to be sure to have this out ahead of the event so we can see it put into action there. A portion of the command zone will be designated testing for this, where we'll probably be seeing members of the CFP and Wizard staff coming by, which is, I think, really cool. I'm hopeful I can do some of this, go in there. Most of my decks have a certain 2 to 3 bracket range at the moment, which again, I'll talk a little bit more later. But I definitely am very, very comfortable playing up in power, have been for a number of years, because that's just generally how my play style has been, and in the ability of my opponents that I played with regularly, I was very comfortable playing up into their zone of play. With that preface, we'll dive straight into the commander brackets. So here we go. There are 5 commander brackets. Each one is meant to classify a different kind of game experience. Brackets 1, 2, and 3 are different levels of socially focused play. Brackets 4 and 5 are focused on a higher power or even competitive experience. Each bracket description has guidance on the 4 kinds of effects that really impact games: 2-card infinite combos, extra turns, mass land denial, and tutors for things other than lands, noting where and how you should expect to see them. So I think this little notation for things other than lands is really important, because obviously doing land ramping is very critical to a not just a healthy game for the whole table, but also just for power aspect. A good way to add power to your game is being able to consistently ramp up a whole color, green being large in its additional land, and ramping that in that form. That's a good thing to note as an exception on these tutor line. For a little bit of additional definition around mass land denial, this is a category of card that most commander players find frustrating, so to emphasize it up front, you should not expect to see these cards anywhere in brackets 1 through 3. So this mass land denial here, I expect some of this would be something like Winter Orb, where it is restricting the untap of your lands, where it's restricting the access to those lands. It could be Armageddon effects, where you're destroying lands en masse, or perhaps a strategy which is centric upon recurring a destroyed target land effect would be also generally discouraged for this mass land denial category. So these cards regularly destroy, exile, bounce other lands. See, all of this. Armageddon, Sunder, Winter Orb, Blood Moon. Yep, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but some of that, but that's just what that is generally referring to in that mass land denial. Additionally, you also see some references to the Game Changers list, and we'll talk about the Game Changers list as well. This is a new small list of cards we will share at the end of these brackets that refer to and cards that are targeted at higher bracket play. First, we'll dig into the brackets. So these are the beta brackets organization here. There are 5 groupings. Bracket 1, Exhibition, your ultra casual commander deck. The things that mark this is there's no mass land denial or extra turns, no 2-card infinite combos, no game changers, a few tutors. The second bracket is your core, which the average current pre-constructed deck usually sits at. Is, again, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, a different from no extra turn spell, no 2-card infinite combos, still no game changers. Few tutors, again, has met the mark here in the second bracket. As we get to the third bracket, this is upgraded beyond the strength of an average precon deck. Still no mass land denial. This is still restricted at no chaining extra turns, but you've got checkmarked for late game 2-card infinite combos, so that can mean a lot of things. Late game can be sometimes as late as only turn 6, turn 7. Late game oftentimes will be a little closer to turn 10 to 12, where 2-card combos are fine. I know a lot of combos that I find in my decks more often than intentionally create are closer to 3 to 4 piece combos, and those I'm sure are generally going to be just fine in the 2 to 3 category. Maybe not just your 1, because even though this is a no 2-card infinite combo, infinite combos probably in your first bracket I would generally discourage. But also in bracket 3, we have 3 game changers. And again, we'll talk about the game changers a little further down. Now, 4 and 5 are pretty much listed the exact same way here. 4 is optimized, high power commander, it's time to go wild, and that has no restrictions other than your banned list. And 5, the same exact way, CEDH, high powered, very competitive, and metagame focused mindset. No restrictions other than the banned list. Now, for me, who's mostly a casual player who has dipped into some CEDH just enough, I don't really care that these are exactly looking the same here. I think I'd like to see a little bit more differences between 4 and 5. Generally here, this looks fairly good. I think some of my initial comments that I probably would find here is in my bracket 1, I think this tutor line just needs to also just be X'd out. There's in your ultra casual deck, you really shouldn't need to worry about doing any tutoring. If you have consistent enough card draw in a bracket 1 deck, great. You'll see more of your deck a little more frequently. I know that is generally my philosophy on building decks, which I can do a whole nother video about my philosophy and what I kind of strategize already as a preface to building a commander deck. But I would just like to see bracket 1 pretty much with all your red slashes here, so no tutors in bracket 1 and just no infinite combos. As you get to your second bracket here, I would like to see, this is again really fine as it is. A few tutors here would be okay. I think what I would probably want to look at is this no game changers to be 1 game changer limit in this second bracket. Some of this might just be that I do play a little bit higher power commander, and so it's like, you know, I'd like to kind of scale things just a little bit heavier as we, you know, grade from our basic decks that maybe we've just built and have no idea how are going to work, or decks that we're looking to, you know, we've played around with a little bit. We've even upgraded significantly. I'd like to have a slightly better gradient in the middle here for some of that. Now at bracket 3, this is great. I like this pretty much. The no mass land denial, the no chaining extra turns. I would have to have a hard time separating your chaining extra turns and 2-card late game combos. If you have an infinite combo as you get later into that game, the chaining extra turns might be a part of that, and that's going to be totally fine. It just takes time and patience sometimes to set up and fully display, okay, at this point I can take the turns I need and I will be able to do XYZ and resolve ending the game. 3 game changers here I think is a great number for this middle ground. I like this. This slot is probably where I will generally be most comfortable at in terms of power scaling, just because I know that I can play there or up. And so that's where I'd like to see the optimized. I think I'd like to see your game changers probably just have a different increase here. I don't know if that means looking at 5 or 7, being mindful of, well, having, 5 colors, multicolored. It's going to be hard or easy in some cases to just max out whatever your game changer cards are. There is some colorless ones, and there's lands. Those are easy enough to add in a lot of the times. I just would like to see this have a different number of game changers restriction, not so much just look exactly the same from optimized casual commander perhaps to a CEDH environment where, all right, we're really looking to have this 1 or 2 events that happen in this sequencing so that I win the game. And that is what I would really look at a CEDH game. And that is pretty much here. They go over their experience and what they're looking for out of each of these brackets. Again, if you're looking to read all of this, you can absolutely find this. We'll have it linked in the description below there. Just want to quick review it and be able to provide my initial now that I've had a few days to gather some thoughts on it here. And now we are to the Game Changers list. What is Game Changers list? You saw several mentions of this list above. This is something new we want to introduce. We think it will be a huge help for matchmaking and understanding the format. Game Changers dramatically warp Commander games, allowing players to run away with resources, shift games in a way that many players dislike, or block people from play, efficiently search for strongest cards, have commanders that tend to take away from more casual games. And unlike previous systems that were discussed, it's only a single additional list to track. So your Game Changers here gives us a tool to unban cards, try nudge around without a ban if needed. So I think this is really important. This tool here sounds like it's not exactly a watch list for like bans, but it is a good way to watch where your power level falls for your deck. And that's really important both as a management for a format of a game and as for all your players who want to go in and easily enjoy playing this game. Now, to be clear, most of these cards are unlikely to be banned. You shouldn't go trading away your Gaze, Cradles, and Concern. However, it is a clear signal for players to know that these cards indicate a different kind of play and that other players might prefer not to play against them. So they are, challenging cards to trend away from in terms of casual play. With that, the Game Changers list here, your Serra's Sanctum, Gaia's Cradle makes enough sense. Those are older cards that have a ton of potential to not just early game and late game play. You do have Drannith Magistrate, which is just very indicative of how you're trying to set a game going in terms of a commander where that is outside of your hand. Blue does have a good chunk of these here because a lot of these are very high-powered and highly enabled cards. So Cyclonic Rift being a very one-sided wipe. Our Expropriate, which I don't really see even all that much anymore. Force of Will is, of course, notorious for its just all use in CDH there, as well as Fierce Guardianship. Rhystic Study being kind of named unto itself. Thassa's Oracle is a very good one to have here because that's just your CDH best of WinCon. Very easy to just hit that, and so that's why that attachment is in here for sure. Your big name tutors, so you have the Enlightened Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, as well as an Imperial Seal. These kind of tutors are just very generic, very broad, but very good at pulling out the combo cards, and so that's important to isolate them into this list. Kind of similarly with Bolas's Citadel, Ad Nauseam, Underworld Breach. Some of these cards are very potent to a point where playing them elevates you out of your basic casual game. All of your multicolor cards are very popular commanders, or infamous perhaps, in most likely the case of Grand Arbiter Augustine IV. But these are all, 3 of the 4 of these at least have had their time, if not still do, in CEDH metas. And then your colorless grouping are lots of your very high-end artifacts that speed up a CEDH game where, well, this is pushing your game from a casual game to a very much more fast-paced power game. this as a base list for, I'm sure, the whole entirety of Magic's collection looks pretty solid. The choices in here are very well explained for all of that, what they're looking at with their beta testing for some of this. It looks great. I'm excited to go to MagicCon Chicago next weekend, be able to say, well, I don't really have any of these in much of my decks, which honestly, I don't really. I think the most of what I usually will bump into might be a Rhystic Study in 3 or so. I will say I've taken a liking to Ancient Tomb in my casual decks because it speeds up the game by accounts of my playing as well as shortening up my life total, making me more vulnerable to my opponents in that manner. But yeah, that is their beta testing the brackets. If you have other thoughts to kind of tag in with what I've said here, or different thoughts perhaps, go ahead, leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, like some of my thoughts, like the video, don't forget to subscribe as well. I'll be getting a game posted this week before heading up for MagicCon Chicago, but at that point I will be all in on next weekend. So I hope to see some of you guys there, and we'll see you next time.